Hello everyone, and welcome back to a brand new nostalgia trip where we go for a ride and we ask the age-old question. Do the games of our childhood hold up? Will a trip down memory lane be a good one? Or will it be something we'll be visiting anytime soon? I'm your host Guaka, and today we're looking at the one, the only, 300 March to Glory. So make sure your kicking boots are on, because tonight we are dining out. Even though I was too young to watch the film, I was also not old enough to play 300 March to Glory. But luckily, my friend let me borrow his copy over the weekend, and I played it until my parents started seeing me killing hordes of enemies and blood spraying everywhere all over that little screen, to the point in which I was forced to give the game back. But I never forgot those great animations, the volleys of arrows descending upon Leonidas, and the surprisingly diverse combat. But now that I've played the God of War games, how does my original Spartan action experience stack up? Well, let's find out. The story of 300 March to Glory is, well, it's a PSP exclusive, based on a movie, which is based on the 300 comic book series by Frank Miller, which is based on the famous story of the 300 Spartans who fought at Thermopylae. From my basic understanding, none of these adaptations are necessarily super historically accurate. They're kind of blown up and exaggerated to make them more dramatic, which is fine because it's not trying to be accurate, it's trying to be epic. It's got some supernatural elements in it as well, and it's still cool to experience and sit through any of these adaptations, honestly. The version told in this game, though, actually borrows from Frank Miller himself, using the cutscenes and parts of the comic, I believe, and it's narrated by David Wenham, reprising his role as Dilios from the film. But man, all I can see and hear is Faramir. He does a great job though, and the 300 story is iconic. While I don't think this is the best way to experience it, it does its job as a movie tie-in game, but the use of Frank Miller's comic panels really does spice it up, and it looks great. Unfortunately, the other cast members of the film do not reprise their voice roles. But funny enough, Crispin Freeman, yes him, voiced Leonidas, and Robin Atkin Downes voiced Astinios. Now if I ever meet either of them, I'm getting my copy of 300 signed, I'm telling you. Movie games are always in that weird space where you never know if the gameplay is going to be real good or real shit. 300 though actually has some pretty engaging moments within its gameplay and its progression. Looking at it, yeah, it's very obvious it's a God of War clone, which honestly is kind of fitting. You'll spend the entire game running around with your Spartans and doing basic combos on enemies, and you actually have access to 3 different weapon types: a sword and shield, a spear and shield, and dual blades. And all of these honestly control pretty well, and as you play the game and get more kills, you'll get these kind of currency that you spend on combos and more effective ways to use your weapons. These combos are cool though because they try and add in the slow motion effects that are in the films, and it works pretty well. You can also do cool stuff like throw your shield Captain America style, throw your spear, and do executions that insta-kill enemies. It's a bit rough around the edges, but it's way more dynamic and in-depth than you'd expect. The game also slowly feeds you all of these tools to keep the campaign fresh, and because you can't unlock everything in a single playthrough, New Game Plus and replaying levels you like add a lot of value to the package. It's not just all killing and beheading enemies though. The game throws a variety of scenarios at you. One of my favorites is the arrow volley, which darkens the screen and you have to put your shield up to block. Or the phalanx little mini-games, which you walk with your fellow Spartans in a line and take down enemies while managing your motivation bar. The bosses in this game are actually not too bad either. Each one is pretty memorable where you have to do different objectives, like for example this big fellow, where you have to push statues onto his head. One of the final bosses as well was genuinely difficult, and for the first time in a while I had to memorize boss patterns in order to beat him. Replaying this game really surprised me with its gameplay, to be honest. The combat actually holds up, but in a different way. You know, when I was younger, I loved the flashy aspect and the blood spraying everywhere and all that kind of stuff. Now that I'm older, I appreciate how deep the combat is, with multiple weapons, variants, and ways to use them, and the progression where you can prioritize how you want to play. Yes, you do need some basic moves and everything in order to deal armor damage with the spear, for example, but honestly, as long as you level up all the gear itself, you can focus on combos with whatever you want. There's even some abilities as well, like where you can heal yourself or get lifesteal damage. And while you do need them for bosses, they all are unlocked at some point and you don't need to level them up. In fact, I didn't. I focused purely on leveling up dual blades and sword skills, and then armor and weapons, and I finished the game just fine. It never felt super difficult or super easy either. It was balanced. The couple of few complaints I do have though are mainly performance wise. The game does tend to chug randomly, and sometimes the camera kinda goes sicko mode. Apart from that though, the only thing I would love would be co-op. Let me smash through this campaign with a friend, or maybe some kind of horde mode would have been super sick. Speaking of extra content though, this is a classic movie game from the 2000s, so you know what that means. Now, if you know me, you know I love bonus content, and when I was a kid I did not even realize this was a thing. You know, anything that contains concept art, random clips, and especially interviews. It's interesting to peer into that time frame in that person's life who's being interviewed, and to think about the upcoming release of the game. You know, March to Glory features a small host of this kind of content. You've got your standard storyboards and concept art for the game, and you've got trailers for the 300 film. Now lucky for me, I already own the 300 film on PSP, but trailers like these actually allow the user to see the quality of a PSP film, which, well, when it's not blown up on a big screen, it actually looks pretty good. Also, a fun fact, the PSP 300 UMD is region free, so if you want to watch it yourself, you can get it from any region and it will work. It's kind of great. Anyway, going on to the interviews, they're actually done by Frank Miller. He talks very passionately, not only about the 300 film, but the game itself and the actual history, and it's great to see someone who just rants about his passion this way. To think that these interviews are locked away on a PSP UMD is kind of sad, and dare I say, I found some lost media.
And so they had the access to virtually the entire known world at the time. There was just this pearl of Greece that eluded their grasp.
It's real nice when a game from back in the day surprises you in ways you didn't pick up as a kid. You know, I'd never played God of War or many action style games when I was younger, so going back now after finishing similar games, I'm shocked at how great it handles. Combat progression, the gameplay loop, it's fresh throughout the entire game. Hell, I've even finished the game a couple times after recording the footage, which is something rarely I do with Nostalgia Trip. If you're a 300 fan and you didn't know of this game, I cannot recommend it enough. If you love action combat in a small package with some decent replay value, I recommend it to you too. And with that said, and the dust settled, I can happily recommend 300 as living up to the memory. The best part though about this whole experience, apart from the gameplay of course, is the price. This game must have been mass produced or something, because generally you can find a copy of this online or from any retro store from about 10 to 20 bucks, and I pretty much see at least 2 to 3 copies in every store. I would recommend the High Seas though if you want a better frame rate, but if you're just starting a PSP collection and you want something quick to pick up and play that's cheap and it's good value for money, this is absolutely perfect. Thank you all for coming to this short but sweet nostalgia trip. If you want to ride shotgun with me again, hit that subscribe and tell me where we should drive to next. I've been your host Guaco, and before I go, I gotta remind you to keep shredding. See ya!
With our victory at Plataea and the death of their most respected general, the Persians left Greece in defeat, never to return. But a danger lurks. Though we have driven out the Persians, their greed and corruption remain, sapping away the very spirit of our people. Still, a hope remains. The son of Leonidas, now our king Pleistakos, will root out this festering sickness before its infection spreads. This is what his father would have done. This is justice. This is honor. This is glory. This is Sparta.